Do you believe in fairies? What do you think they look like? What do they sound like? If you saw one while you were driving down the road, would you stop to say hi? Our guest today has become used to the high strange. In fact, he himself has a podcast devoted to the unexplainable happening around us all the time, because he himself has seen some things that will give you pause. Hear Shane's stories today on Homespun Haints.
Hello, Hainted Loves. Welcome to Homespun Haints. I'm Becky.
I'm Diana.
And today on the show, we have some more spooky holiday stories for you.
Insert festive jingling here.
Jingle bells. Well, the holidays may be over for some of us, and for some of us, they're ongoing, and for some of us, it's a spooky party every day. Like here on the Homespun Haints channel.
Exactly.
We are featuring Shane of the Dark Notes podcast. We actually recorded this interview months ago, and we put it away in our special little Santa Gremlin-shaped cookie jar to save for today.
Just to put it in your stocking.
Yes. I hope you all had a very lovely Christmas for those of you that celebrate. This episode is actually coming out the day after Christmas. I don't know when you're listening to it, but I know you're not listening to it before Christmas.
Unless you are a time traveler like Bigfoot.
Or like maybe our guest. Lots of really interesting stories today. It is so paranormal. It is more paranormal than we usually get.
It is. It truly is. We've got a lot of stuff going on today. But first, I think we should talk about our Christmas experience.
Yes. Well, the new year is coming up. It is the season of getting rid of all of those horrible gifts that you got that you just had to kind of smile and grimace when they were given to you and say, thank you. You know, when you say thank you, it's like more of a question. We've all had presents like that, and sometimes we keep them around forever and ever and ever, stuffed on a top shelf in some forgotten closet, collecting dust and ghosts. Even the ghosts are like, what the hell? And we forget about them until 12 years later, we discover that goldfish bowl filled with plastic flamingos and wonder, why did somebody give me toothpicks shaped like ants?
This actually happened. This is based on a true story. Okay.
Yeah, I can't make this stuff up.
Toothpicks shaped like ants for the woman who has everything except for ant-shaped toothpicks.
We all have received those gifts. We never get what we really want.
You never get what you want, and no matter how proud you are of giving somebody something, you can't trust their reaction to be genuine. It's a big mystery. It's a big lie, gift giving. I feel like it's a lie in general. My family's not super big on gift giving, especially with adults. When I turned 17, they were like, you're an adult.
Go buy your own gifts.
Here's a card.
When you think about it, though, it is kind of nice to just buy what you want when you want it. And I understand some of us do rely, especially when we're younger, we kind of rely on those presents to kind of help the year go through. And I know many years I would just be like, I just want money because I want to be able to pay for my heat.
Right?
So speaking of gifts that are good and gifts that are bad, what is the worst present that you have ever received? And does it rival toothpicks shaped like ants?
Well, when I was younger, like you said, you do kind of depend on gifts. So I'd always make a Christmas list that was like the size of my leg. And I was like, one of these things, please just don't get me something ridiculous. Just there's a list of 100 things to pick from. Please go with the list. Nobody ever went with the list. Worst, unfortunately, was my grandmother. She had her own ways of thinking, and she had these ideas that to her were just like these brilliant ideas. So one year when I was coming upon teenage age, going on 13, I overheard her talking to my parents about how she had found this artisan designer who designed, she said, sweaters with animals on them. And they were like 3-dimensional fuzzy animals. And I was like, oh, that's actually pretty cool. This is the early 90s. So like sweater with the cool animal fluffy thing on it. That's very 90s. So I was excited because I'd overheard this and I was like, this is what I'm getting this year. I'm getting this animal sweatshirt. This is fun. And I unwrapped it under the tree. And what it actually was like a Hanes sweatshirt in powder blue with a fluffy embroidered skunk sewn to the front of it.
Oh no.
Not just like a little pocket skunk. Like a skunk that went all the way from the collar to the hem and was about an inch deep.
Artisanal.
Yeah, one of a kind, apparently. That was a big disappointment, but I was a teenager. At that point, I had already learned better than to get excited. I was like just slapping my wrist like, oh, I shouldn't have gotten excited about Grandma's gift. I know what comes from Grandma, because when I was much younger and I didn't know better and I got excited for all gifts because I was like 7 or something, we had a tradition where I was allowed to open one gift on Christmas Eve. And so I picked out this gift that I thought was going to be amazing because it was one of the bigger ones under the tree. I open this gift and I'm unwrapping it. And as I open this box, what comes out is a pale white ceramic hand.
Just a hand?
Just a disembodied hand. And my face must have fallen so far because without any prompting at all, my parents said, why don't you open a second one?
Just a ceramic hand? That's a great gift for a 7-year-old. It's breakable. It has no meaning.
You cannot play with it. You can't even really hold it because you're 7 and you're probably going to break it. Apparently what it's for is for propping up on your dresser and putting your rings on at night.
Oh.
Well, somebody's rings. I didn't have any rings. I was 7.
I would actually love something like that because I'm always losing my rings.
At some point over the next 3 years, she gave me another one. I don't know if she forgot she gave me the first one.
Were they both like left hands or was at least one a different
They were both right hands. They didn't match at all. The first one was very delicate. In fact, it was fused at the 2 center fingers, so really only 3 of the fingers could be used for ring holding. And then the second one was stocky. I took the stocky one and I painted its fingernails purple, and that almost kind of qualified as something I could keep. But of course, when you're a kid, you're not allowed to get rid of grandma gifts. There they were on my shelf for years and years.
I can't even remember all the terrible gifts I've gotten over the years. But I'm also a terrible gift giver. I'm just really bad at it. I never know what to get people. I've given gifts where people actually look at me and go, really?
To your face?
Yes, to my face. So
no.
I can't judge. I'm really bad at it.
I think it's because you have such a strange sense. You appreciate things simply because they're weird.
Yes, I do.
A lot of the time. I don't think anybody appreciates things as much as you do just simply because of weirdness. I've always been an excellent gift giver, Becky. Always. The best gift I've ever given for Christmas was when I was 2.5. And I was finally old enough that my dad finally asked me, what do you want to get for your mom for Christmas? And I had an idea. I fired back instantaneously, hot dog on a stick. And so Christmas Eve, we went to the mall. And you remember the yellow, red, and blue striped uniform with the lemons all over the place and the hot dog on a stick place? Yeah. Mm-hmm. We bought a hot dog on a stick and I wrapped it. And I gave it to my mother for Christmas.
Oh, man.
I know she liked it because she said thank you. I was so proud.
Well, you should be. That's very creative.
Thank you.
And who doesn't want a hot dog that's been wrapped?
For overnight.
12 hours. Yes. Sounds great.
Under the tree.
We're like, Mom, eat it.
It's like, what does my mom want? Instantaneously, oh, fried processed meat. Fresh fried processed meat.
Not so fresh anymore.
On a stick.
Well, Hainted Loves, we hope that you got better gifts this season. If you're a gift giving and receiving type, some people just choose to go without. We hope that you've had an enjoyable season. This episode is airing on Boxing Day, which is the day which you box up all the gifts you don't want and return them to the store.
Is that what it's for? I've always wondered.
We hope that you're having a great day. We hope that you have a fabulous new year. This is going to be the last episode we release for a while.
Oh, we'll miss you guys.
We'll miss you. If you miss us too much, you definitely can check us out on our Patreon, because we're going to continue to release content on our Patreon at patreon.com/homespunhaint. So if you miss us that badly, go join our Patreon. You can continue to get stuff from us throughout all of January. We will be back in February. And also follow us on TikTok and Instagram at Homespun Haints for both of them, because there we're going to let you know about any special things that we're going to be doing in January and maybe give you a clue about some of the cool stuff and the cool guests that we're going to be featuring in 2023. And if there's going to be any special live performances that might be taking place. Hint, hint, wink, wink. Be sure you go follow us on those platforms and stay up to date. Well, Diana, that was traumatic. Through the old gifts.
Not as traumatic, Becky, as this commercial break.
Today on the show, we are pleased to bring you another spooky paranormal podcaster, Shane of Dark Notes Podcast. He is joining us today because he actually has a ghost story, or maybe two.
Well, that makes sense.
You can find him on Instagram with the handle UFO Bigfoot. So he is all things paranormal, as you can imagine from a title like that. So Shane, tell us a little bit about everything that you do. What are you into? What do you bring to the world? Tell us about your podcast, all of the things.
Okay. Hey, guys. Yeah, me and my friend Lisa, for the past year, we've been doing a podcast called Dark Notes. Every episode's on Spotify, and it's all things paranormal. We love finding these accounts of high strangeness. The weirder, the better for us. We're both obsessed with this thing, and it's really been fun. Both of us have had strange experiences our whole life. So with us, it's not a matter of belief or anything. It's just, we know.
Yes. I know that you also talk a lot about cryptids as well. That's something that fascinates you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm obsessed with them. I just call them monsters most of the time. For me, the obsession within the past year of cryptids and humanoids, especially the fairy, the little people, things like that, I have gone down a rabbit hole with that stuff, and I just love that stuff. That's probably where my focus is when I'm researching and gathering accounts. Most of the time, I'm focused on that here lately.
Would you call the little people and the hidden folk, would you call them cryptids?
Yeah, I kind of put them in that same general phenomenon. To me, it's just the same as Bigfoot, Flatwood Monster, all that stuff. I think it's all related.
I've always felt like Bigfoot, the reason that people never find him or her is because they're kind of extra dimensional.
I agree.
They're slipping in and out of our realm, if you will, just the way fairies would, or elves, or trolls.
Right. And it seems like every straightforward Bigfoot account, if you scratch a little bit, there's some kind of weird phenomenon happening, even if they choose to ignore it. It happens so much that it doesn't seem to be coincidence. It seems to be related.
I don't know what you're talking about. Give me some stories. I'm curious.
A lot of times with Bigfoot sightings, there's anomalous lights. Balls of light are seen. Sometimes people hear voices in their head and things like that. We got on a kick a couple weeks ago about the Bigfoot wearing belts accounts, and there's actually several of them. That's been a recent obsession too.
So people can listen to that on your podcast?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure that we have links to your pod and specifically that episode in our show notes, because I definitely want to make sure people can get a hold of that. And then just to recap, your Instagram account is UFO Bigfoot. Well, as much as I love talking about Bigfoot and UFOs and fairies and all of the things, you have a ghost story for us today.
I do.
I'm going to sit back and give you the floor and let you start from the beginning.
Okay. When I was 8 years old, my family, which was me, my mom, and dad, my dad was transferred from his job, and we moved to a new town and a new house. I still remember it very clearly. We had probably been there a week or two, My parents were outside talking to the neighbors on the front porch, and I was in the living room watching TV. It was probably 8 o'clock at night or so. And I just had this weird feeling come over. I just remember being a happy kid, loved watching TV. And I had this feeling come over me that there was something to the right of me, and that if I looked at it, I was going to be scared. It was just an instant feeling like that. So, of course, I looked to the right of me, and there's this white silhouette lady in white, floating down the hallway with no face.
Oh no.
Yeah. I immediately freaked out and was like, oh my God. And being a kid and being scared and not knowing what to do, I just put my head down towards the ground and tried not to look at it. I was like, what do I do? What do I do? The only thing I could think to do was to run outside to where my parents were. But I had to go through her because she was there. And so I just kept my head down and I looked up and she was still there floating. And I went through her and went outside to where my parents were and never told them.
What?
Yeah. I was so freaked out. I just stayed out there with them until they came back in. And yeah, that was it. I can still remember what she looked like clearly. Also at that same house, around the same time, when I would go to bed at night, I would hear whispering in my ear and hear laughter and conversations. And if I try to focus in on it to hear what they were saying, it was just gibberish. It would never come together. It was so bizarre. And I mean, it was really freaky. Still, I never told my parents. I went back and asked my mom if she remembered anything about that house here in the past few years. I've asked her and told her what happened. And she said there was always a weird vibe there. The voices stopped when I moved bedrooms. And I went and asked her, I was like, why did I go to you guys and ask to move bedrooms? And she said she couldn't remember. So I don't know, maybe I asked them to or something. But as soon as I switched bedrooms, everything stopped.
When you saw the lady initially, were you in your bedroom or were you in the living room?
No, the living room with the TV.
So whatever was going on was happening throughout the entire house, but maybe it was just concentrated in that bedroom.
Yeah, still blows my mind because I don't think there was a death there or anything.
There doesn't have to be.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So yeah, it's still a mystery to me.
When you told your mother as an adult recently, what was her reaction?
She did say, well, that house was pretty weird. There was one incident that she focused on that I didn't remember where there was a mysterious fire in the garage. Her and my dad could never figure it out. She said it was just, it shouldn't have happened, you know. Also, it was a turbulent time in our lives. And the more I read these accounts, that seems that this phenomenon kicks in when that's going on. That was my first little peek into the strangeness.
Well, there's several things that stick out to me. First of all, as you said, when there's a lot of negative energy from turbulence in the family, relationships, things like that, changes, stress, all of those things can kind of attract that kind of energy. In my little neck of the woods here north of Atlanta, there've been quite a few accounts actually of like really, really haunted properties just burning down for no reason.
Oh, wow.
I haven't researched that in depth, but I keep hearing about that happening. So I'm thinking there must be some kind of link there, like something really haunted and then a fire.
Right.
I don't know what's going on with that. And then hearing voices as you're trying to fall asleep is considered to be a sign of clairaudience and sensitivity to other things. So I am curious, have you had specifically ghostly experiences since then that would indicate that you are maybe more sensitive or open to these things?
Yeah, I guess I've always felt things, but I've had a couple more experiences that were profound. Once again, it was at a turbulent time in my life as an adult. I heard anomalous music for about an hour. It was the same thing as being a kid hearing the voices. I could not pinpoint where it was coming from. It was like it was coming from the air in front of me. I've always been a music lover, and I played several instruments, and I'm a record collector and all that. So like when I listen to music, I can pick apart notes and instruments. I could not do that with this music. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard in my life. I mean, it was ecstatic. It was amazing. And that's how I know it was anomalous. It was probably at the very lowest point of my life. And I took it as a message of hope. Like some fairies took pity on me or something and were like, here you go, man.
This will cheer you up.
I
Aw.
like that.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean. I'm a musician myself, and I can't just hear the whole piece of music. It's always like the individual instruments and all that. So I know how bizarre that must sound to not be able to pick apart the different instruments, just like you couldn't pick apart the different words for those conversations you were hearing.
It was fascinating.
Have you felt the need to or desire to replicate it while playing your instruments or anything?
You know what? I have. It's so funny. A year after this happened, and I was in a much better spot in my life, things had turned. I woke up in the middle of the night one night, and I had on college radio, and they were playing a piece of music that what woke me up was it sounded like the music I had heard. And I woke up like, oh my God, that's it. And it was Max Richter from Sleep. One of the most beautiful pieces of music I've ever heard. Now, that being said, it was similar, but it wasn't the same. So that's the closest I've heard to it is Max Richter.
I wonder if we contacted him and said, hey, did you get inspired for that piece?
Oh, he's a weird dude. It's probably his inspiration, the ethereal.
That sounds like it was an overwhelmingly positive experience. You were at a really low point and then you heard the music for an hour. You realized that it wasn't coming from this dimension and it kind of gave you some hope. It's really interesting. And then you said you blamed it on a fairy. Do you mean something in the other world?
Yeah.
Okay.
And apparently Max Richter heard it too.
Yeah.
We'll have to dive into that.
So you said that there had been a few experiences that were profound since your childhood one. Were there any others that you want to share?
The most profound one I ever had was Christmas Eve 2014. I was moving to Asheville the next day to the mountains, and I had been working this job for 9 or 10 years, and I was driving to my boss's house to drop off all the keys from this job and to say goodbye and all that. So I'm driving down the road out in the country. It's like 8:30 at night. And this orange ball of light flies right directly in front of my windshield, like the size of a cantaloupe, like an inch from my windshield. And I was like, what was that? So I had the weirdest reaction thinking about it now. I immediately pull over to the side of the road because I want to see it. So I pull over to the side of the road. It's in this field in the country. And as soon as I open my door, I look up and there's 12 of these orange balls of light right in front of me, like 5 feet away. Some of them were like 5 feet away. Some of them were like 10 feet away. And they all just stopped and were hovering in front of me. I'm flabbergasted. I'm just staring at these things, watching them. The first vibe I got, and this is like, I was into strange things, but I had never really dove deep into it. This was before that. My first thought was like, oh, it's like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, because they all had little personalities. Some of them were like stoic and just stood there, and some were like whizzing around and kind of playing around, and some of them would get brighter and brighter, like they were on a dimmer switch. They would just get bright and bright and bright and then go down into nothing and then bright and bright. So I'm standing there watching these things. My rational mind, I'm going through everything it could be. It's like, okay, they're not Chinese lanterns. They're not flares. That whatever this is, it's none of that. I was watching them trying to see, okay, this is a light. Is there a structure to it? or is it just light? And as soon as I thought that, one of them dimmed into nothing. So there was nothing there. There was no object. But when it was lit up, it almost looked like an object. But then it would dim into nothing, and there was nothing there. It was just air. I stood there for like, at the most, 5 minutes and watched these things. And it was just, they were like, okay, we'll see you later. They all took off in a line, one by one, into the field and just went away. It was amazing. It's the weirdest thing. Another thing that happened, my eyes were red and swollen for like 2 or 3 days afterwards. A few years later, probably 3 or 4 years later, I was like, damn, that was pretty weird. I ought to look into that. So I got on the MUFON database and I put a report in. And then I was like, well, let me see if anything else happened that night. And there were dozens of sightings of the same thing all over the world that night. Insane.
Whoa.
All over the world.
Yeah, over the world, mainly in the US, but on both coasts.
Whoa.
All over. And the times, if you look at the time they reported, it syncs up. Different time zones, but around the same time. So it's like, how could they be there and here? And most of them said 12 orange orbs of light, or 9. Like, it was almost like threes, like 3 or 6 or 9 or 12. It's so bizarre.
Interesting. Wow.
Oh my gosh.
I know you said you were about to go to a job in Asheville. Was this in Asheville or was this before you moved there?
No, this is a little town called Hickory, North Carolina.
Yeah, I know Hickory.
Western North Carolina.
Mm-hmm. I'm from Kingsport, Tennessee, originally, so I know that whole area. I've seen a lot of strange phenomena just in those woods myself, but to have that happen all over the world, wow. So either it was something that was like interdimensional that people were seeing, that everybody was seeing either the same 9 or 12 balls, or just thousands of these descended on the earth all at the same time, and only some people could see them.
Yeah, definitely an interesting aspect of it was Christmas Eve.
Right. Very close to the solstice, and there's some meaningful times around there. People tend to congregate together during that time of the year and take time off work. And so who knows what could have gone into that. Whoa,
Right.
I have so many questions.
Well, I am curious because you've researched UFOs and things like that. Like, of course, when you first said balls of light in the sky, my first thought was, oh, yeah, of course, it's UFOs.
Yeah.
But I get the impression from you that you think it wasn't extraterrestrial.
No, I don't. And like I said, this is before I really started digging into this stuff when this happened. But there was never a thought that it was extraterrestrial. It seemed to me instinctively like, oh, these are from the earth. They've been here forever. Like, I don't know. I really had that feeling when it happened. Like, oh, I'm getting to witness this phenomenon, but it seems like it's right at home. And then the more I dug into it and research it, yeah, they've been seeing these for thousands of years all over the world. And the same exact description of what I saw. Some of them are different colors. So I told my mom about this. And my great-grandmother's from Tennessee, from Western Tennessee. And there's a story that when her sister passed away, and this is God knows how long ago now, but her sister passed away and her and someone else went over to her house to clean it out and all that stuff, like a day or two after she was dead. And as soon as they went to the front gate to open the gate, a ball of light shot out of the house and out of the gate into the sky. It was understood in my family, oh yeah, these are dead people. These balls of light are spirits. And it's just always been within the family, I guess, thought of that way. Like, oh yeah, you'll see these things are usually spirits of our loved ones or whatever.
How interesting. Totally different, though, when we're talking about many people seeing the same group of 12 at the same time around the world. That can't be related to specific people who have just passed away.
Exactly. I agree. It's
When you saw these, you said they were only about 5 feet away from you. Did you pursue them? Did you attempt to catch up and touch them or get closer?
because I was in awe of this, I felt honored for whatever reason. Like, so I didn't want to mess up the relationship. So I didn't make any sudden movements or anything like that. But I kept putting my arm out towards them, just seeing how close I would get. And I came within a couple inches, but I didn't try to put my hand through one or touch them or anything.
That's
Okay.
probably good, seeing as how just looking at him made your eyes swell up.
Yeah.
And then when you thought, I wonder if it's coming from a source, and if it goes out, I'll be able to see the source, and immediately it went out. Do you think it was communicating with your thoughts?
I do. There was something so bizarre about the experience where it was almost as soon as that one flew in front of my car, I went into a weird state of mind that was like a trance like state. And I can't explain it. I really don't even have the words to explain it. But the whole time they were there, I was in a different state of mind. And yeah, I feel that they knew what I was thinking. I don't know why I feel that way. I just do.
Well, it sounds like you kind of knew what they were thinking too.
Right? They had personalities, like individual personality traits. These balls of light.
Which you don't normally think of balls of light having personalities, but it was really clear to you in that state of mind. And of course, a lot of debunking theorists will say, oh, most paranormal light sightings are ball lightning. I don't know enough about ball lightning to say one way or the other if that's even a realistic suggestion.
I've seen ball lightning, and it's totally different. Ball lightning behaves like it stays close to the ground, and it's just an erratic natural phenomenon. This was not. This was independent, intelligent, and totally unexplainable. That was what was so bizarre when I was trying to deduce the situation rationally, was for something to behave like these things are behaving, it would have to be an object, but it wasn't an object. That blew my mind.
It didn't have any mass that you could detect, just light.
These lights were independently operating. Now, there is, of course, natural phenomenon like ball lightning and escaped gases and stuff like that, but that's so easily discernible from this phenomenon, I think.
If you had to speculate in your deepest imagination, what would you say explains this? What are they?
I still don't know. One of the models that works for me, but it doesn't explain everything, is the Fae. Whatever that is, it's closest to that, but that still doesn't answer most of those questions. But when I refer to it now or think of it now, that's the model I use, is the Fae.
That was my thought as well. If something is from another dimension, it may appear as one giant thing from one direction and 12 smaller things from another direction. Who knows the way those things would work?
There's so many cases since that's happened, and I've gone into researching more. There's so many cases where these things are seen with other phenomenon. Like some of them where crafts are seen or cryptids, the same lights we're talking about. And a lot of the times it seems like the introduction to the encounter is the lights, which is fascinating to me. I don't know what it means, but it's like the creepy organ music starts playing, that's the lights.
Thinning of the veil, perhaps.
Or opening of a door in your mind.
Or a harbinger. That's a really fascinating story. What have you learned in your ongoing interviews and research and chats and et cetera about the Fae that we wouldn't just be able to see from the human legends about the Fae? Is there any secret knowledge you've come into that you want to share?
It's fascinating to me how it seems every culture throughout time has had these legends of the little people, even here in North Carolina. I looked into that more, and Tennessee. A lot of the Native American tribes where it's just matter of fact. It's like, oh yeah, the little people. Throughout history, the similarities with the Bigfoot phenomenon. So many of the accounts are similar. And again, just the way where there's a lot of Bigfoot accounts with anomalous lights, same with the little people accounts. They'll hear the anomalous music or anomalous lights.
And do you have any insight into the meaning of why these are coming through to us?
No, I don't.
Oh, that's okay. I don't either.
As fascinating as it is, it's all a mystery still.
Still a great mystery.
It's an enjoyable one, that's for sure. Well, I guess we just have to learn to accept that there's a lot about this world that we will never know. There is so much more than what we can see with our own eyes.
Absolutely.
And it's great to talk to another mountain person. Asheville's just such a cool area. Hainted Loves, y'all have been listening to Shane of Dark Notes podcast and UFO Bigfoot on Instagram relay some of his very unusual stories. These are not your typical ghost stories, so that was quite nice to get some interesting perspective on some other phenomena that are ghost adjacent. Shane, it's been a pleasure so much to listen to you. We will include links to Shane's podcast and that belted Bigfoot episode. I want to make sure we include a special link to that in our show notes at homespunhaints.com. And while you're on Instagram, scrolling through all of Shane's amazing content at UFO Bigfoot, be sure you check us out at Homespun on Instagram, where we will include some quotes from this episode and some other interesting facts. Shane, thanks again. This has been wonderful.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, guys.
And everybody out there, have a spooky day.
Homespun Haints is hosted by Becky Kielimnik and Diana Doty, and produced by Homespun Haints Media LLC. Editing and music by Becky Kielimnik. Show notes by Diana Doty. If you have a ghost story and you'd like to be considered as a guest for this podcast, please visit our website at homespunhaints.com/submit.